You guys know how much I love bread. Matter of fact, Steve and my two girls also love this source of carbs. So, I recently baked an entire loaf of milk bread, which is probably one of the best versions of sliced bread out there. It also holds well in a Ziploc bag and comes in so handy for making sandwiches or adding it to a breakfast spread. I use it often for tuna sandwiches or my recipe for a Japanese egg sandwich or tamago sando. Keep watching if you're interested in learning how it's done. The tools and ingredients you'll need to make milk bread include a mixer, a scale for accurate measurements, a rectangular 9x4 loaf pan, bread flour, white sugar, salted butter, milk, and water. And to achieve the fluffiness in milk bread, I will be using instant dry yeast by Angel Yeast. To ensure that your yeast activates properly, make sure that it is not expired. Founded in 1986, Angel Yeast's mission is to innovate for a healthy and sustainable future using yeast biotechnology. They're a yeast supplier with a global presence, with production bases in 13 cities across the globe. They provide various types of yeast for which you can find on their website to help yield optimal fermentation results. For my milk bread, we're going to be using 7 grams of instant dry yeast. Now combine it with 90 grams of warm water and 40 grams of white sugar. Gently mix until the sugar is dissolved, then cover the bowl with saran wrap and set it aside for 10 minutes. You'll also need 30 grams of salted butter cut into tiny cubes. Set aside another 10 grams for use later for greasing the loaf pan. With all that said, let's get started by adding 335 grams of bread flour into your mixing bowl. Lock the bowl onto the base of your mixer, then add your hook attachment. Into the bowl, you're going to add 140 grams of room temperature whole milk as well as your yeast sugar mixture, which should be nice and foamy by now. Now mix the ingredients at speed 2 for 2 minutes. Make sure you lock your mixer in place because there's going to be a lot of action going on here. When the dough begins to form a ball, you're going to add 10 grams of room temperature water. Subsequently, you're going to mix at speed 4 for another 4 minutes. When 4 minutes up, stop the mixing. Then you're going to add the butter cubes into the dough. Lower your hook attachment and lock your mixer in place. Again, we're going to mix the dough at speed 2 for 2 minutes. And you guessed it, now we're going to mix at speed 4 for another 4 minutes. Following speed 4, we're going to mix at speed 6 for 2 minutes. When you've mixed at speed 6 for 2 minutes, you're going to stop the mixer. Remove the dough from the hook attachment. Then lower and repeat the last process, mixing at speed 6 for another 2 minutes. The mixing has finally come to an end, and you'll notice that your dough has developed into a soft, fluffy pillow. Remove the dough from the hook attachment. Separately, you're going to grease a large bowl. Then you're going to remove the dough from the mixing bowl, knead it for a bit, and form it into a nice ball. Roll this ball around in the greasy bowl until the dough is coated with oil. Then cover with saran wrap and set it aside in a warm place for about an hour or until it doubles in size. My dough definitely doubled in size, as you can see, and to determine if it is ready, poke the center of the dough with a finger. If the hole retains its shape, then your dough is likely ready for use. Now throw a nice punch to deflate the dough as well as to release some built-in anger and frustration. Now dust and brush some flour onto your working station to prevent the dough from sticking, then pound it some more to get rid of any air. I rolled my dough up into a ball, and it's time to cut it into 3 equal pieces. I'm just eyeballing it for now, but this is when my digital scale comes into play again. Weigh each piece and add or subtract from the others until all 3 pieces weigh the same. Using about 10 grams of butter, grease your entire loaf pan. Keep in mind the lid of the loaf pan can be on or off during baking. If you're keeping it on, then grease the lid as well. If you're keeping it off, I suggest brushing the top of your milk bread with an egg wash before baking it. And here's where the fun part begins. Using a rolling pin, roll each piece of the dough into a long rectangular shape. I was doing this with kids at home, so rush the process. But if you have the time and patience, please practice some diligence here so that your bread comes out looking as good as possible. Fold each side of the dough over until the edges meet. Tuck the ends into the center, then roll the rectangular dough towards you. Make sure you roll the dough until it is consistently even throughout and the smooth side of the dough is facing up in the loaf pan. Repeat the same process with the other two pieces and carefully place them into the loaf pan. As you can see, as a result of me not practicing diligence since there was so much going on in my kitchen at the time, my dough was a bit uneven, not leveled when placed into the pan, and some of the surfaces weren't smooth enough. Please don't do that. Well, when all three pieces are in, cover with saran wrap once again and place in a warm environment for another hour or until it doubles in size. Now bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 to 30 minutes. And as a reminder, you can bake with the grease lid on or without the lid, but brush the surface of the dough with an egg wash made with an egg and 1 teaspoon of water. After about 27 minutes of baking, my bread came out like this. I did forget the egg wash, but it still looked and tasted beautifully. Upon removing it from the oven, drop the loaf pan onto your counter a couple of times before removing the bread onto a drying rack. And now, just admire this loaf of milk bread from every angle. Give it a nice twirl. Then cut it open. Wow, wow, wow. Nice, soft, and fluffy. What more can you ask for? I'd like to consider myself a very humble person, but I'll be honest with you. Both of my girls wanted my milk bread as soon as it came out of the oven. They kept going, "Bao bao, bao bao, I want bao bao." So we ended up eating half of the entire loaf and saved the rest for tomorrow morning. Yep, it didn't last too long. Well, if you enjoyed my recipe, please leave me a comment below and make sure to visit rackoflam.com for more. Thank you so much for watching.